In a high-stakes pitch, you have one shot to convince your audience to take action. Most pitches fail not because the idea is bad, but because the message doesn't stick. So why do some presentations change the world while others fall flat? Years ago, I set out to answer that question, and I studied hundreds of speeches from business leaders, activists, visionaries, and I found something absolutely incredible. The greatest communicators of all time follow the same pattern. It's a structure, and it's one that makes ideas stick, and it moves people to action. So when I gave my TED Talk, I revealed the secret behind why some presentations captivate while others fall flat. The most powerful speakers, they don't just inform, they tell a story, and they use time-tested principles that make ideas unforgettable. It doesn't take an hour to move your audience. It doesn't even take 30 minutes. One of the most memorable product launches in history lasted just 5 minutes. And now I'm going to show you exactly why it was so powerful, and you can apply those principles in your next product launch. So let's break down Steve Jobs' introduction to the Macintosh. In 1984, Jobs stood on a stage with a single object in a bag. No slides, no explanation, just one moment that was designed to change everything.
You've just seen some pictures of Macintosh. Now I'd like to show you Macintosh in person. All of the images you are about to see on the large screen will be generated by what's in that bag.
What Jobs is doing here is creating this rise of tension. He's making the audience just sit in the world they know before pulling them into something different. And he does it by withholding the reveal. He slows the moment down and lets the audience anticipate. At this moment, the audience has only seen the Mac sitting on a table. They haven't experienced it yet, and they don't know what it's capable of. Jobs is following the same storytelling structure that I discovered that has moved audiences for centuries. He started by reminding them of the world they know. He unpacked what is, or the status quo, the way that things had always been. And now at the time, you have to remember, you're all probably too young to know this, but computers were really complex machines, and they spoke a language that nobody but programmers understood. And the industry was dominated by IBM, and their machines reinforced this idea that computers are tools for businesses and not people. But Jobs didn't need to say any of this outright. He let the audience feel it. In every great story, just like in any great product launch, the audience is hooked when they're told that the world that they think they know is no longer the only possibility. And Jobs builds that tension so beautifully. What he was proposing was almost too radical to believe because at the time, computers couldn't generate images. So there's a moment in storytelling where the hero is called to adventure. It's the moment of every great story where your audience is invited into something bigger than themselves. The question is, will they believe it though? And at this moment, the audience is still in this current state of the world, which is what is. They've seen computers before, but what Jobs is hinting at just doesn't even sound possible. But that's the brilliance of contrast. The greater the gap between what is and what could be, the more powerful the message becomes. So in my TED Talk, I opened by telling the audience that they have the power to change the world. Not because it was a nice thing to say, but because it set up contrast. If you tell someone that they would have world-changing potential, their first reaction is not necessarily agreement, it's doubt. They feel this tension because they're thinking of the limitations or the obstacles that are in their way. But that tension is the point. It's what makes that message so compelling, because once people feel the weight of what is, they are primed to crave what could be. So when you're preparing your product launch, ask yourself, what belief does my audience hold that I might need to challenge? And what's the one thing I can say that brings that cathartic rise of tension into the room? Could be a statistic that goes against convention. It could be a great question that forces them to rethink their perspective, or even a bold statement that feels almost too bold to believe. You don't want them to ease into this. You want to grip their attention from the very start. And that's exactly what Jobs was doing in that moment. And it's the reason why his pitch hooks us immediately. Make your audience the hero. I'm going to play the end of that clip again, but this time I want you to focus on the audience's reaction as he walks across the stage.
All of the images you are about to see on the large screen will be generated by what's in that bag.
Did you hear that? The room did not break out in applause. We can't see them, but we can hear them. You could hear that they're a little uneasy. There's uneasy laughter, a couple of people whispering. It's the kind of reaction that kind of can throw you off your game as a presenter if you're not the one controlling it. But Jobs knew exactly what he was doing. And what we're hearing is the sound of the audience like grappling, that something feels a little too far outside their reality. That hesitation in storytelling is called the refusal of the call. And every great story has it. In the hero's journey, it is that moment where the hero, or in this case, the audience, they're kind of pushing back. They're like, this is a little uncomfortable. Not because they don't want to believe, but because believing means they have to let go of what they've always known is true. And here's the key principle to remember. The audience is the hero, not Steve Jobs, not the Mac. The people in the room are the hero. And most presenters make the mistake of putting themselves at the center of the story. But the greatest communicators make the audience the hero. From their perspective, what Jobs is saying is a challenge to everything they know. Up until this moment, computers had been predictable. Now here was Steve Jobs standing on a stage suggesting that a machine could be different. But he knew how to pull his audience through that resistance. He wasn't going to tell them that the world had changed. He was about to show them, and let's see what he does next. There is a lot to unpack there because there are so many moments of freaking brilliance. Did you notice how Jobs took his time unpacking the Macintosh? He removed it from the bag, almost like it was the crown jewels. He gave it power before he even turned it on, and he allowed the tension to build. It's quite theatrical, actually. And it's in the hero's journey structure, because after the hero resists the call to adventure, they don't just leap forward on their own. They need someone to guide them. This is the mentor or the guide in a story. A mentor is a character who offers a glimpse of what's possible. At this moment, Jobs wasn't just a guy selling a new computer. He was offering a completely new relationship with technology. When he turned it on and inserted the floppy disk, the room transformed. For the first time, the audience saw what this machine could do. Before then, computer screens were full of type on a screen, but now you can make images and use this new thing called a mouse. It was a moment of complete contrast. The old world, where computers were complex and impersonal, juxtaposed to this new world where the technology, it's intuitive, it's inviting, and for the first time, it's creative. Then, Jobs did something completely masterful in that moment. He stepped back. Most presenters, when they reveal a new product or idea, they immediately want to launch in like, well, I'm going to explain this. Yeah, I'm going to list some features. I'm going to compare some specs. I'm going to tell the audience why this new product matters. It's like they're trying to justify their idea before the audience can even absorb it. But Jobs knew that he wasn't there to give answers. He was there to create belief. And up until this moment, the audience believed that Jobs was the guide on their journey, but he subverts that expectation. He doesn't narrate, he doesn't instruct, he doesn't make claims or be in the spotlight. He lets the Macintosh take center stage. And by doing this, he begins to position the Mac itself as the mentor, like it's another character in the audience journey. This becomes important later, but even in the moment, it's a radical shift. Now remember, the mentor isn't just someone who teaches. The mentor reshapes the hero's worldview. In that instant, the audience was not looking at Jobs for guidance. They're fixated on the Macintosh because it is showing them and demonstrating a whole new world. That shift from believing in Jobs to believing in the Mac is what makes this moment so powerful. Jobs made the audience feel that shift and sit in it. So you might not be unveiling a world-changing piece of technology, but the principles he used are ones that you can apply to any product launch. And most presenters act like, oh, I'm the main character of this launch and I want to explain all my great ideas. But Jobs understood that the audience is the hero. I want you to really think about your audience's journey and how you can guide their journey. When Jobs slowly pulled the Mac out of the bag, he made the audience crave the reveal so that when it came, it was a cathartic release. Where can you bring tension into your talk? How can you surprise your audience? How can you show them instead of telling them? And where can you create a moment that truly makes them feel something? Let's watch what happens next.
Now, we've done a lot of talking about Macintosh recently, but today, for the first time ever, I'd like to let Macintosh speak for itself.
This is an incredible moment. Jobs has already delivered everything that the audience was expecting. He built tension. He created a climax. He gave them catharsis. The audience saw what the Mac was capable of, and they felt the weight of the moment. He could have just ended it right there, and it would have been a really great product launch. But what he's doing here is making it unforgettable. He is asking the audience to not only continue suspending their disbelief, but to believe in something even bigger. This is, again, that tension in the gap between what is and what could be. They're hesitant, and what Jobs is suggesting is almost too real to grasp. A computer speaking for itself defies everything they've ever known about technology. And in a classic narrative structure, this is the second climax, the moment our hero, the audience, they're truly tested, and it's this final test of belief. They've already seen the contrast between what is, what could be. They felt the shift, but stepping into this new world requires one last leap. And Steve Jobs doesn't push them. He just simply opens the door.
Hello, I am Macintosh. It sure is great to get out of that bag.
Right there. That is the pivotal what could be moment. Everything has been building up to this point, but the audience didn't know that. Only Jobs knew that. When the Macintosh speaks, the entire paradigm changes. Computers weren't supposed to introduce themselves or acknowledge the room, but there it was. It was speaking. This is the moment when the hero, the audience, has stepped beyond the familiar and they entered into the complete unknown. The Macintosh was not just a piece of technology. It was an entirely new way of thinking and creating. The audience has just experienced something that will change their world forever. So let's look at the rest of that clip.
And accustomed as I am to public speaking, I'd like to share with you a maxim I thought of the first time I made an IBM mainframe. Never trust a computer you can't with. Obviously I can talk, but right now I'd like to sit back and listen. So it is with considerable pride that I introduce a man who's been like a father to me, Steve Jobs.
Remember earlier when I said that Jobs was setting up the Macintosh, not himself as the mentor in the audience's journey? What he was doing was planting a seed that the Macintosh is a character, like it's alive. And by the end, it wasn't just a claim. It was reality. He started his product launch by introducing the Mac, and now the Macintosh was introducing him. It is an incredible full circle moment. And it works so well because the human brain loves patterns. When something comes full circle in an unexpected way, it sticks because it gives you this unforgettable closure. So at the start, the audience was skeptical. They hesitated in resistance, but now they believed. If a computer can be playful, if it could speak, if it could be something more than what they'd ever believed, what else was possible? I see so many presentations that are speaker-centric, but the best communicators reframe reality so that the audience can see the world differently. Whether you create a product launch or you're asking your audience to believe something new and to have a real impact, you need to come full circle. You don't just end when you finish your slides. You need to resolve the story. You need to leave the audience with a moment that ties everything together in a way that they will never forget. But to do this, you first need to know exactly what you want your audience to believe. And once you have this, think about the beginning of your presentation as planting a seed of belief. You introduce an idea or a challenge that they question, and then by the end, you return to it. But now your audience sees it differently, and they believe. This gives your pitch a natural arc and a sense of resonance. It's like Dorothy, clicking her heels in The Wizard of Oz when she realizes, oh my gosh, home was inside of here all along. It's a resolution that can only be earned once the hero has gone on a journey and has a new perspective. And you need to take your audience on that journey, and you need to close that circle, just as Steve Jobs has shown. And you know what? You can do it all in 5 minutes, just like he did. So if you found this breakdown valuable, don't forget to like the video, maybe subscribe for more deep dives like this. If you're ready to apply these principles to your own product launch, we highly recommend Resonate Storytelling Training. And this course is going to help you build persuasive product launches using the same story techniques that Steve Jobs used and the world's best communicators used to inspire and move audiences of all sizes. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.